What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Today we're talking about lifelong gardening. Those who love making things grow don't think of gardening only in terms of the physical activity. They actually have a deep emotional connection to their outdoor spaces, the things they grow, and the tools they use. Gardening is a part of their identity, and it may be tough to let go of it as aging and physical challenges ensue. Stay tuned to learn more about making gardening a lifelong pursuit and how care partners can help.
I used to think healthcare was all the same until I discovered Pace at home. Now I can come to a place to stay active, see the doctor, or just enjoy a meal with my friends. Plus, having a team of people that help me make sense of my options gives me the support I need to stay in charge of my own health. It's been life-changing.
With Pace at Home, we offer a unique lineup of personalized care and a caring staff that feels like family, all under one roof. Call today and discover a community of caring delivered at your own pace.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karen Summey, Project Manager for ACAP Community and an active family caregiver. If you're listening to our live broadcast, today is Friday, July 4, 2025 at 12 noon Eastern Time. Happy Independence Day to the USA, and we're delighted to have you with us. Both my guest and I are live in the chat panel as you watch the show we recorded for you recently. We're standing by, ready to take your questions and comments during the broadcast. To join in the discussion, simply sign in to your own YouTube or Google account to access the chat panel in YouTube. If you're listening to our replay, you can also sign in and leave comments below your video screen, and we'll get back to you very soon. Our guest today is Mr. John Bowen. John is a retired science teacher and an active master gardener in Buncombe County in western North Carolina. He and his wife and 2 cats moved to the Asheville area 7 years ago, where they put in a garden and remodeled a house, in that order. First things first, John says. Welcome to First Fridays with ACAP, John. We're happy you're here.
I am so happy to be here, Karen. I always love to talk about gardening and hear other gardeners' stories.
Me too. I can't wait to have this discussion. So, true confession, John, I have struggled my entire life to make things grow, but I've certainly enjoyed the beautiful fruits and vegetables that I have canned and frozen over the years from my family's harvest. And there have been a lot of lovely flowers as well. So I certainly appreciate the passion a gardener has as they watch new life spring up and produce something wonderful. I know there will be so many people today who are interested in what you have to say about your own passion for gardening, and how you and others can pursue it until the very end of our life's journey. I'd like to kick things off with a little bit about how you got into gardening and how you became a master gardener. So let's define what that is. Help us understand who and what a master gardener is.
Well, Karen, the Master Gardener program is a nationwide program that's largely under the auspices of the Land-Grant University Cooperative Extension Service. So here in North Carolina, that would be North Carolina State University. Master gardeners are trained volunteers who share research-based gardening knowledge with the public. So we have the best of both worlds. We get to teach and help others in our community, and we continue to grow and learn more about gardening ourselves. It's a great, great habit, Karen.
Great. And I want to just touch on one point that you made there. You talked about it being research-based. It's not a terribly big surprise that it would be because it's attached to a university, but tell us a little bit about what that means, research-based.
Well, that's a great question. And so much of what we know about gardening is what our parents or grandparents taught us, old anecdotes we've read in the Farmer's Almanac, things like this. And we realize that there's some science behind gardening. And so the university system has put together, through cooperative extension, a program to get master gardeners to talk about scientific soil testing, insect identification, disease control, nutrition, things that go into making gardens grow better in our specific region that have some basis in fact and just aren't old wives' tales or anecdotes or things you've learned. So it's a way to bring science to the picture and to help us be consistent in our approach and utilize the knowledge that our universities are developing that help farmers apply that to gardeners.
Well, that's fascinating. And honestly, I've heard the term Master Gardener for a number of years, and I really didn't understand what that term came from. I just assumed that it was people who were really good at gardening and went through some sort of certification, but I didn't know about the research part. So that's really good. So, how did you come to be involved with lifelong gardening?
Oh, like many things, Karen, it's a journey. I've been a gardener since I was knee high to a groundhog. And I'm 73 now, so it's been a few years. And lately, my gardening chores have just gotten harder and harder and harder. And there's some things I can't do. I can still go out there in the yard. I can still get in a whole day's work in the garden. But these days, it takes me 3 days to get it finished. Well, a
Right.
few years ago, some of us here in the program in North Carolina attended a lifelong gardening program that was provided by the the Wisconsin Master Gardener Group. I realized sitting there listening to them that this was important, that learning about how to garden is one thing, and learning how to garden safely, how to garden with good technique, how to make adaptations and adjustments to your gardening that will stick with you as you age, that will keep you in the garden, is quite another matter than just learning about how to grow plants. So it became a project, it became a passion. And several of us here formed a small group of master gardeners and developed a program based on our interest, our knowledge, our community, and we could share the information throughout North Carolina. So it's really a program in three parts. The first part is about things that can be done with your garden. The second part is about things you can do as a gardener, like warm up exercises and body mechanics. And the third part is about adaptive tools, ergonomically appropriate tools that can keep you in your garden for a lifetime. So today we're mostly talking about what you can do in your garden, although we are going to mention a couple of tools that might be helpful.
That'll be great. And I noticed that you said here in North Carolina, but there are land grant universities all over the United States, I assume. And so are there master gardener programs all over the United States as well?
Yes, there are master programs throughout the United States, and most of them are under the auspices of the land grant colleges. But it is a nationwide program. We cooperate, we share information. Some states are more active, but everywhere you go, somewhere, you can find a master gardener.
Okay, I wanted to clarify that because our viewing audience is from everywhere. So I wanted to make sure they knew that this was relevant to them as well. Okay, so you've talked a little bit about doing this over a lifetime. And so now that you're getting a little bit older, tell us about your experience of aging into your garden. How do you do that? And do you have someone supporting you with that?
Oh, that's a great question. About 5 years ago, I found that I needed back surgery. And after the surgery, it left some lasting damage to my sciatic nerve. I have a leg that doesn't work right. And I think that's largely due to some pretty bad body mechanics that I've used over the years, shoveling a lot of mulch. What I've learned here is that lifting while twisting is not a good idea. So I had to curtail some activities that I love to do. I can't move mountains of mulch anymore. I can't run my rototiller. I can watch somebody else do it, but I can't do it myself. I shouldn't dig big holes for planting large plants. I have to be very careful there. I have to be very careful when I'm lifting pots just because they're heavy, and I have to be sure to line myself up with proper technique. I had an epiphany one day. A few years ago, we had a fairly large oak tree in the back of our town lot here, which blew down. It left a big hole in the canopy, a big sunny spot. I went out there and looked at it and said, I haven't paid much attention to this area, but look at this. Look at all this sun that's here in this spot now. I could put in some garden beds here now while I still can. And then I stopped and listened to myself and said, John, do you hear what you just said? You want to put in more garden beds now while you still can. What's going to happen when you can't? When you can't take care of them?
Right.
Who's going to do it? So that sort of stopped me. It gave me a big wake-up call and said, John, pay attention to your own garden. What are you going to have to do to keep it working well? So I find myself now in a little different situation because I don't have any children to keep their eye on the old man and keep him in line here. My wife watches over what I'm doing. She watches out the window, but she's not a gardener, Karen. So she's not out there with me. She doesn't understand exactly what the stresses are with the things I'm trying to do. So I'm speaking to you and to the caregivers today from both sides of the garden fence. On the one hand, I'm the gardener who can't do everything, who mourns his loss ability, who sometimes tries to do some stupid stuff that he really shouldn't do. And I'm also having to act on my own part as the responsible adult who wants to keep that overeager gardener both safe and happy. So it's an interesting place to be, watching both things I'm doing.
It certainly is, and you are not alone, because all people who are aging continue to try to do things that they really shouldn't or cannot any longer do. And so we all have a tendency to do that. I'm sure that our viewers and listeners today can hear the passion that you bring to your gardening, and I'm equally sure that people who are gardeners will empathize with what you're saying. But let's talk a little bit about to those who may be care partners for their aging parents or other loved ones who may not be gardeners. What should non-gardeners know about those who love to garden as they age?
That's an important question because we gardeners sometimes don't understand what non-gardeners think about us and what we're doing. I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but important to know that gardening isn't just physical. It's a deeply emotional process. It's our identity. It's, pardon a pun here, it's our grounding. It's our place in the world. And, certainly we say, well, yeah, I can go out and buy tomatoes in the farmer's market. I can get fresh flowers at the florist. I can take a walk in the park. But for us gardeners, that's not the same. The tomatoes I buy are not the ones I grow. The flowers I buy are not the ones I grow. That's personal, and it matters a lot to me. The thought of giving that up for most of us gardeners is heartbreaking. And if you're not a gardener, you can be hard to see that, but it's really a wrenching process. So please, if you are a care partner to a gardener, please try to understand that it's a lot more than just doing some work out there in the dirt. Please don't trivialize it for us. And don't be surprised if for some reason one day the loss of what we can't do, the loss of what we used to do, can bring us to tears. Be prepared for that, please.
Right. Absolutely important. So if we're paying attention and we're a care partner and we have an older adult who is slowing down a bit, how can we help? What should we know as caregivers? What should we do to be of assistance?
I'm sure sometimes that looks overwhelming, and it's important to recognize that you're talking about a change process here. And as such, change takes time. So my first suggestion as a caregiver is don't rush in and try to make changes to what I'm doing, changes in my garden overnight. Use a gentle approach. Think about how you probably should try to take the older adult's car keys away. It's not walking in, I hope, and saying, well, Mom, no more driving for you. It's a conversational approach. Well, no more freeway driving for you. It's a gentler approach. And that's what we need as gardeners. For some reason, we have a quirk. Gardeners like to think that they're in control. And I mean, with the bugs and the weather, I admit that's probably an illusion, but still, we like to think we're in control, and we need time to adjust to changes in our practices, changes in our garden. We need to adjust to what we can't do anymore. So I suggest use some incremental transitions with us. Make changes over months, or if there's something that's a large thing that has to change, maybe it can even be changed over a period of years. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's saying, let's try a lawn service for a couple of months and see how that goes. Rather than saying to me, well, John, today I'm taking away the keys to your riding lawnmower. No more riding for you. So try the incremental approach and acknowledge, too, that as we let go of this, there's grief, there's mourning. As a caregiver, you're going to wonder why we're doing that. But we are mourning something. So talk about it with us. Work together with us. Help us learn to adapt together. I'd like to take a moment here just to recommend a really great little book called Gardening for a Lifetime by Sydney Eddison. It's not a long book, but it's the story of how she adapted in her gardening life to her loss of ability. She had a huge garden with her husband, and they found they had to reduce what they did. They had to cut back on areas that they took care of. They had to hire different gardening help. So every chapter is a reflection on what that process was like, what it felt like to her, how she adapted to it, and the questions that you can ask yourself or your gardeners. So my recommendation, find this book, share it with your care partners, share it with your aging gardeners. I think it's a great basis for some very important conversations about lifelong gardening.
Thank you for that, and we will be sure that we put the reference to that in our video description after we finish our recording, so thank you. We appreciate that. How can caregivers help their gardener know what types of things to change or eliminate? What is the process for doing that?
I think of it, Karen, as a reflective process. It's a matter of having some thoughtful conversations. There's a great game you can play with people called, best thing, worst thing. What's the best thing that happened to you today? What's the worst thing that can happen to you today? Well, gardeners can do the same sort of thing. They can stop at the end of the day and say to themselves or to their caregiver, what gave me joy today? What did I really love doing? Did I love seeing the birds? Did I love picking the tomatoes? Did I love transplanting little plants? What was my joy? What was the very best thing about gardening today? For me, I know it's often just an opportunity to start and transplant little plants into bigger pots so I can give those away and share them with my neighbors. And the flip side of this, of course, is to ask yourself and your gardener, what causes frustration? What was my most unhappy moment? Was it the weeding that I couldn't get done? Was it the edging out the garden bed that I couldn't do? Was it the large pile of mulch that my neighbor had and I'm not allowed to touch it because my back won't let me? Where's the sadness? Where's the frustration? Where are the things I can't get done or I'm not allowed to do? What feels like a chore? What do I hate doing? Do I hate pruning roses? Do I hate edging the lawn around the sidewalk? What do I hate about my garden? And then step back, reflect on that, and make the changes that you're going to make based on those reflections. Say, what can I do to maximize the joy? What can I do to eliminate the frustration? And as a caregiver, it gives you a chance to approach the gardener by saying, well, you said that not getting the edging done on the sidewalk was really frustrating to you, and you loved working with the arranging the begonias in the back. What if we hired somebody to take care of that part that frustrated you didn't get done? What if we hired somebody to do the edging and gave you more time to do the part that you enjoyed? Maybe your gardener will say, wow, yeah, hadn't thought about that, of having somebody come in and help me do this to maximize my joy there. So I think that's part of the easy way to, a way to approach it is to say, what works well for you? What doesn't? What can we do to eliminate the bad parts and in turn maximize the good parts?
That sounds like such a good approach. I mean, most people, even people who are in their careers talk about how there are certain parts of their jobs that they love and certain parts they really wish they could do away with. I know I've done that over my lifetime. And so just to think about going into the garden and having that experience minus the things you really don't like about it would be fabulous. So I think that's a very good approach. I'm assuming you're also talking about some physical downsizing for those who have larger gardens. Are there ways to gracefully downsize the garden?
Oh, I surely hope so, because my garden is going to be on the block for some serious downsizing. And downsizing is kind of a dangerous word. I mean, gardeners hear that. They say, oh, I can't downsize. I have to grow 72 tomatoes and I have to have all the peonies over here. Well, we know we don't, but downsizing is kind of tricky. So let's think about maybe in three ways. One thing you can do is to physically shrink the garden bed, shrink the borders, shrink the vegetable garden. Just have less space under cultivation, less space under maintenance. It's less stuff you have to do. It's just a smaller garden, less gardening area. That's kind of obvious. But another way to think about downsizing that or shrinking the garden is to change what's planted there. Maybe you keep just as many beds under cultivation, but you take out some of the plants and you change them to perennials, shrubs, flowering shrubs, things that don't need the care, that don't need the attention, don't need the pruning, don't need the deadheading, the spraying for bugs. So the amount of garden space is the same, but the plants in it are requiring less attention. They're requiring less effort. And that's a downsizing in the amount of effort you have to put in to keep a garden. Then the third possibility is to actually step back and say, let's hire some people to come in and help with this. I may not make it any smaller, but if I can get somebody to spread the mulch, then I don't have to. So what I've done is I've downsized my effort by multiplying that by letting somebody else come in and do part of that work. We could talk about that for a long time. Maybe we'll touch back on that question later about hiring help. But it is definitely
These
a
are
way.
great tips. Well, and I do want to come back to the hiring help just a little bit later, but let's talk about the techniques and the tools for adapting the garden. You first mentioned physically shrinking the beds. It's fairly self-evident what you would do to shrink the physical size of a garden, but what are some other ways you could change the actual environment of a garden to make it better for an aging senior or someone with lessening abilities?
One possibility here is to move to container gardening to get out of the soil. We have a great picture popping up here of a pretty extensive container collection.
That's
it looks
beautiful.
I wish that one were mine. It's not quite like that. But what we say when we're talking about containers, either raised beds or pots like this, is if you can't get the gardener down to the garden, bring the garden up to the gardener. Raise the level of the planting area so you're not having to bend over, stress your knees, stress your back quite so much. It's more control over the soil. It's more control over the weeding. It's great for growing herbs. It's great for growing flowers, as you see here. And I think an important part of this, if you're talking to a gardener about transitioning to doing more in pots, is to raise the ideas that a couple of these pots, you see they're combination plants. They're not just all one thing. That a couple of these pots, properly planted, properly maintained, can themselves be a microcosm of your whole garden bed. And just as satisfying as you get in there and pay really close attention to the one thing. I'm not suggesting bonsai here. We're not quite at that level of intensity. But still, the pots themselves can be very fulfilling and accomplish many of the same things that the bigger garden will do. So that's definitely one way you can go, is just to go to a contained garden and reduce the size, reduce the bending, reduce the effort, and still maintain much of the joy.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Those are all interesting ways to help those a little less mobile as they age. And I've actually contemplated some of these things for myself because I'm getting to that stage where I need to be thinking about what is possible and what's not. And, you know, the raised beds and the containers are one of the only ways that I can foresee being able to do this for the future, even as a new gardener. So are there specific tools or tips to ease the work and stay safe in the garden?
Oh, yes, there are many, many, and we could talk for hours about that. But I want to show you a picture here of just one that I use all the time. It's a garden kneeling bench. In fact, that's me there using my kneeling bench in the garden. What is great about a kneeling bench is that it's lightweight, it's portable, it's reversible. So in the one photo there, you see me on the kneeling bench working with a digging tool there in the grass. It does two things. It protects your knees from being on the hard ground. And probably even more importantly for me, you can grab those handles and you have a way to get back up off the ground.
Right.
That's
important.
So much simpler. Often we're down and cannot get back up. But you flip it over and it becomes a garden bench. It becomes a seat. And there's two things about that. Firstly, being able to sit sometimes is a back saver. I use it when I pick my blueberries. I used it yesterday. I'm out there picking blueberries, and because I'm sitting there, I'm just reaching out in front of me instead of having to bend over and cause that back pain. So the garden seat is really, really useful. And the other way it's really useful is that we know that sometimes in the garden, we just get tired. And we know that it makes sense. They tell us that we should take breaks every 20 minutes, take a little tiny rest, let ourselves recuperate. But what I find is I'm out there working and my 20-minute comes up and I say, oh, John, it's time to take a rest. If I don't have a place to sit down, I am not taking a rest. But if I have
I
that
get
bench
that.
nearby, I've got a seat. I can sit there. I can think about what I'm doing. I can think of my garden and all the things I enjoy. I can contemplate my next job and have it more well planned. So just having the bench allows me to use the bench. And that in itself is a really big asset out there in the garden.
Right.
Another item I want to show you I think is pretty important. Another photo here of a pot mover, a pot caddy. I like this one because we talked about growing things in pots. Large pots can be heavy. They can be risky to move. I have about 16 or so fairly large pots on my patio, and they have to move to follow the sun. They have to move it to the garage sometimes when it gets too cold. This pot caddy is a simple tool. You roll up to the pot, drop the little lever down, rock it back, and roll that pot across the yard. It's amazing. It will handle probably 100-pound pot without any problem. It's simple to use. It's really a back saver. We were talking to a gardener at one of our programs once before, and she said, I used to grow herbs. I had a big garden. I had to shrink it and shrink it and shrink it. All I have left of my garden is the herbs that I grow in the pots on my patio. I love growing the herbs, and I can't do it effectively because on the patio, the shade comes in and sun comes. It changes with the seasons. She said, I can't do the herbs. Said, but with the pot mover, I can move the pots to follow the sun. She said, John, you just saved my garden.
That looks like a really handy tool. And, I've never seen one before until you showed the picture. It looks very much like a hand truck, only it has the little apparatus at the top to kind of lock down over the lip of the top of the pot. So that's very interesting. Now I'll know to look for those because I'm interested in those pots. So yes, that would be something that would be handy for me. Let's talk about something we haven't talked about, and that's falling. We know that there is uneven terrain in a garden, especially a vegetable garden, I'm assuming, where you've plowed and you've got furrows and that sort of thing. So uneven terrain, which is often not a friend for someone who's a little bit unstable. So how do we stop those falls that can be so very dangerous?
Oh, Karen, I wish I had a way to totally stop those falls that are so very dangerous. And it's just like being in your house. There are things that sneak up on you. One suggestion here as a caregiver and as a gardener is to just walk around your yard and look for some places that could be hazard, things that you think might be causes of trips and falls. I know I've fallen maybe 3 times in my garden in the last 2 or 3 years, and each time it was tripping over a water hose. And if my grass gets too long and the hoses are streaked across the grass, I don't always see them because they're kind of buried in there. But they're like little snakes just reaching out to grab you by the ankle. I have a stepping stone pathway, which we put in because we thought it would be just really cute, ornamental, very effective there. Well, the stones are a little too small. They're overgrown with grass. And sometimes I don't actually see quite where the edge is. I walk across that pathway and my foot bends a little bit, my ankle bends, and I might say to myself, John, one day you're going down. So a wise person would remove that pathway, and I just maybe haven't quite gotten to that point yet. The proactive part is pretty important. One of the surprises that research has shown is that one of the more challenging things in the garden that can cause you to fall is weeding, pulling weeds. I wouldn't have thought it, but interviews with many people indicate this is the case. And what happens is that we get off balance. We're weeding, and then we see a weed that's a little bit farther away that we simply have to get because we're gardeners. We reach out for it, and down we go. Or we're just walking through the garden and just paying attention to things, and we see a weed over here to the side. We aren't even in the weeding mode, but we see a weed, and it doesn't belong there. So we have to lean over and grab it and pull it out because we just spotted it. That impulsive move that's not planned, and down we go. And the third thing that happens, and this happens to me all the time, is I was weeding a large area the other day. I was on the ground for about 45 minutes, just scooting around on my bottom and pulling weeds and having a great time. And then it was time to get up. And I started to get up and I didn't have anything to lean on. My leg did not want to cooperate. And so all of a sudden I'm getting up and then I'm lurching forward with a leg that didn't work, and I didn't fall, but I could have easily fallen down in the process of getting up, if that makes any sense at all.
It does.
So a suggestion here, and may sound really trivial, but a really important suggestion. Think about this. Do not get on the ground without a plan for getting back up.
Great tip.
That
Absolutely.
can be tough. And there are a couple other things that can help prevent falls in the garden besides just being aware of what's there and avoiding the spontaneous weeding moves. We could pull up a photo here maybe of a garden rail. This is one that one of our master gardeners installed for her father. Maybe a little bit hard to see, but down the center is a black iron rail. It's going through the bed, and he used to like to get out there and just walk through the bed, look at the plants. It was his garden. He found himself more and more unstable. So they put in an iron railing there. He holds with one hand. Now he can walk all through that garden. He can go out and do what he enjoys, but he has something to provide stability, and it doesn't look bad. It's not intrusive. It's not a big fence or something. It almost looks architectural there, and it probably wasn't terribly hard to install. So that's one possibility. Install something to let people have a balance while they're walking. And we also know that garden pathways can be treacherous. This is a photo of a person in a motorized chair on a garden pathway. Well, it seems to be a sequence of things. We start off with a garden pathway, and maybe it's grass or turf. Well, turf gets very uneven. Turf gets muddy, it gets slippery, it grows in clumps, and it can be terribly, terribly uneven. Often we put in bark or chips or something like that to make a path, but those too can be very, very uneven. So what research has shown is that the very best thing to do for a path is to actually put in a hard surface. It's a permanent thing, but put in a hard surface like a town, like a city sidewalk. If you have a gardener who's going to be in their garden for a while, it could be the best thing you could do for them, just as a way to help keep them upright, and particularly if they're using any kind of a mobility device where they have to move the device along as well as themselves. That hard surface can make all the difference in the ability and the stability if they're out of that surface.
I would have to assume that a hard surface like that would take a fair amount of planning so that you're putting it in the right places and, keeping your garden area versatile enough if you wanted to change it around. So are there people who can help you do that sort of thing?
I cannot make any specific recommendations, but I'm sure that a good landscape designer could help you look at that and give some thought to that. And yes, you're right. It's an expense. It's permanent. It takes some thought. And that kind of goes back to that idea of if you're going to make changes, they don't have to happen overnight. Think about where that path could go. If you're the caregiver, talk to your gardener and say, well, if we were putting a path in, now we're not, but if we were putting a path in and it was going to be permanent, where would you want it to be? And give that some thought and consideration over a period of time. Maybe it takes a year or two to get to that point because it is a big change.
Okay. These are all great suggestions, John. And, we know that even on our best day, emergencies can happen. So when folks are out in the garden and possibly away from their family or maybe even out of sight just because there are tall plants blocking the view or whatever, how can they stay safe or get help if there is an emergency in the garden, say they've fallen or whatever the case may be?
Oh, great question, and it's really wise to be prepared. I'm sure a lot of us have some sort of fall alert systems, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I'll bet that a lot of those fall alert systems stay in the house when the gardener is out in the garden.
That's right.
So I don't have one myself, but what I do is I carry my cell phone everywhere in the garden. And I learned the hard way that garden dirt and cell phones don't get along. So I carry my phone in a baggie just stuck in my pocket, or you can stick it in an apron pocket. The baggie wraps around, keeps the dirt out of the contacts in there, but I can actually answer it and talk on it through the baggie. I can even text on it.
That's interesting.
Through the baggie. It's not the very best, but if I fall, I'm not really concerned about the very best. I'm concerned about it working. And it gives me an opportunity to keep the phone with me, have access to it, but keep the phone from getting ruined by the dirt. And another thing that can
And
do,
possibly water.
possibly water, although I confess I do go out in the rain. Well, I do go out in the sprinkler.
Or a garden
Yep.
hose,
Or a garden hose, especially one that's tripped me.
Right.
Another thing that phone can do for you is, since we talked a minute ago about the advantage of taking breaks, every 20 minutes, stopping what you're doing, sitting down on your garden bench, contemplating the garden, taking a rest. If you're a compulsive worker, you can even set that phone for 20-minute interval alarms and let it be your reminder that it's time to take that 20-minute break. And if it's in your pocket, you'll sure be able to hear it. So
that's a great tip. I use my timer all the time for various things, so that's a really good tip.
Yeah, well, take that phone out there with you.
Right. Okay. Well, this is just wonderful, and I want to let our audience know that we've been showing some photographs during the video segment of our podcast, and if you happen to be listening by audio, we will have a handout with these photographs on it so that you have a reference that you can look at during the audio podcast. And I want to talk for a minute before we come to the close here. We talked about hiring garden help. So what should we know if we think that we're ready for that stage where we're hiring some help for various tasks?
Oh, that is a hot topic, and we could go on for hours about that. What you said there was a little interesting. We think we're ready for hiring somebody because often there's a difference of opinion. Caregiver may think, yep, we're ready. And gardener's thinking, nope, not ready. And here's why the gardener is going to object. The gardener is going to say, well, I can do this myself, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're going to pull up my plants, or maybe it's just too expensive. And in our conversations, we find that gardeners tend to be in two mindsets. On the one hand, you have those gardeners who say, garden is mine, I designed it, I planted it, and by golly, if I can't do the work out there, I don't even want the garden. It's rare, but there are some who are adamant that way. And on the other mindset, there are those who say, wow, getting that lawn service guy in here to take care of the mowing so I could play with the roses is the best thing I ever did. Now I get to spend my time doing what I love. So it polarizes people. And it's important, too, to consider. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And really, if you think about it, I would think that if you're doing some informal kind of help, you're not signing a lifelong contract here. You can try it. If it doesn't work for you, then you can discontinue that. So that's, it's at least a trial period.
Absolutely. It's a trial period. And you should also ask yourself about what level of help you need. Maybe you just need some casual labor. Maybe you need somebody to come in the spring and help you spread the mulch. Maybe you need somebody to come in the fall and rake all those leaves. And it's a one-time thing. It's not a lifetime commitment. It's a one-day job, and they're done. Maybe you need ongoing maintenance. Maybe you want a lawn service to come in once a week, take care of the turf and do the edging and clean up all the grass clippings. That's still a relatively low level of gardening expertise that's required. Maybe for what you're doing, you want some skilled gardening help. Maybe you need somebody who knows how to plant, who knows how to prune, who knows what grows well together, who knows how to apply pesticides if you're doing that. And that can be a little harder to find. And it's often expensive. If you go, say, to a garden center, they often have teams that will come and do that. You get people that know their job. You often get continuity, the same people coming out time after time after time. So they learn how to work with you and you learn how to work with them. But I think it's important to ask yourself, what do I need? How much expertise does that require? How often do I need them? And then how much is it worth to me? How much is it going to cost? And how much, to be the voice of doom here, how much does a broken hip cost? Weigh it and say, well, is this something that's important enough to me that we can afford it?
Right.
It can be hard to find help. People say, I can't find anybody to do this. And my suggestion there is ask around, talk about it. Ask your neighbors, ask members of a local garden club, call your master gardeners locally and see if they know of anybody. Talk to people at nurseries. Often there are people at nurseries who are working there in the nursery and they're thinking about setting up their own landscaping business and they want to go out on their own and you can get them started, or the nursery actually has a crew that can come in and do things. Online groups, there are Facebook groups that are dedicated to gardening, next door groups, neighborhood groups. They often have suggestions for people. It takes time, it may be kind of trial and error, but the good help is out there. And I confess here, twice, I talked to people twice, I found teenagers who were willing to work. I know that's almost unheard of, but I found 2 good teenagers. I just asked neighbors, and it can happen. It's a miracle, Karen, but it can happen.
And the younger folks are off from school during the summer when gardens are at their peak, so that's really a good fit, I would think. And, you know, for those, I'm glad you mentioned social media. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I have seen so many times where somebody's on social media, on Facebook or wherever, and you'll see an original message that says ISO, meaning in search of, and then you'll hear a request that comes after that, or see one, and people respond to that so well, and they will give you recommendations on who they use and why they like that person or that company or whatever. So you can always put a post out on social media and say, I'm in search of this in this area. You know, a lot of times people say go, and then they want responses to come in. So that's a really good idea too.
Well, so much we've talked about today is about communication, about asking questions, about listening to answers, about sharing information, and that's a great way to do it. Well, Karen, I want you to know that I have enjoyed talking with all of you about this today. There are just so many things we can do to anticipate and prevent problems, and it's important for caregivers to be sensitive and empathetic about the changes that are coming. And it's important for the gardeners to be empathetic and sensitive to the idea that the caregivers are trying to keep them safe and help them out. It's really a two-way street there. And please, Karen, caregivers, think about what we saw here. Think about what you can do to help keep your aging gardeners in their gardens for a lifetime. It matters a lot.
That's right. Well, John, thank you so much. You've given us some wonderful insights about how you can participate and enjoy your lifelong gardening. I hope the caregivers who are listening will help their aging loved ones stay in the garden for as long as they can, and perhaps take advantage of some of these tips and tools that we've heard today. And I want to thank you, our viewers and listeners. Hopefully this look at lifelong gardening will be helpful for you in your caregiving journey. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to click the like button below your video screen. If you'd like to hear more of our broadcast, click the subscribe button as well. And please keep in mind that you can share today's podcast with family and friends by clicking the share button. We also want to say thank you to Pace at Home in Newton, North Carolina for sponsoring all of our Caregiver Community podcasts, and to Every Age, our sustaining partner. Please join us again on Friday, August 1 for our next episode. You can view the replay of today's program through our website at www.acapcommunity.org, or find the audio podcast as part of the mesh network of online shows and podcasts. You'll find us on any platform where you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website. While you're on our site, we hope you'll take a few minutes to learn more about ACAP, our free educational programs for caregivers, and our growing number of local community chapters offering in-person programs. Until next time, be well. Bye for now.